Greetings and welcome back to part 5 of Pentad and Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe. I'm happy to bring you the final part to Pentad chapter, and we got 5 parts out of chapter 5. So I thought that was interesting. We're picking up at rhythms of manifestation. From the contemplation of plants, men might be invited to mathematical inquiries. Quote, there's little doubt that the final years of the 20th century are a time of rapid global, national, and individual transformation. Rising higher on the spiral of experience, a new world requires a transformed vision based on cooperation or partnership with nature, not exploitation. We'll have to see nature on her terms, as she is abandoning the false images that have led to environmental disasters. Most of these delusions are centered around static pictures, nouns with distracting labels, snapshots, and pigeonholes, such as greenhouse effect, ozone depletion, waste management, and pollution control. Instead, we can see nature as verbs, movies, ongoing process, and work with these to discover ways to prevent worsening conditions. Insight into nature's geometric language will help us grasp her message. We can begin by learning to look at plants differently. Any plants, from house plants and gardens to the groceries, fruits, and vegetables, to the great jungles and forests of the planet. We can train ourselves to view plants not as things, but as patterns of moving energy. Have you ever noticed how a plant grows over a period of days and weeks? Or how a flower opens, or the way new leaves unfurl on a vine? They spiral into existence, resembling whirlpools. Plants are not things, but energy events. It is only our slow nervous system that fixes surfaces and takes static snapshots of plants when the reality is continual change, slow process, energy in motion, a spiral path. Practice observing plants over time, in whole and in detail, and your vision will gradually shift to conform with life facts rather than the incomplete pictures and cliches we file within ourselves. As you look at some living vegetation, use your imagination to visualize plants as graphs of energy in motion. When you have seen plants this way, you may want a deeper understanding of their rhythms. A pine cone is helpful for this. Look carefully at one with an attitude of seeing anew, and you'll notice that each bract, the brown, modified leaf that covers the seed, pine nut, lies upon a spiral chain of bracts, winding from pole to pole to the pine cone. Parallel to this spiral chain are other spirals that also wrap from pole to pole. Each bract is also part of a spiral that spins in the opposite direction from that of the first spiral at a different slant. Follow it around. Other spirals lie parallel to it. The point is that each bract lies where two spirals cross. Contemplate the pine cone as the physical manifestation of two opposite, simultaneously spinning whirlpools, where their lines of force cross. Living mats manifests. Living matter manifests. Once you begin to see in this way, you may be surprised at how obvious the spiral architecture of plants has always been. Living nature comes about by whirling into manifestation. At first, as invisible living light, it thickens and swirls in energetic lines of force. Upon these lines, the more dense substance of the ancient world mother goddess, the four phases of matter or matter precipitates, descending from light to gas to liquid and finally solid expression. The spirals of the pine cone are the material manifestation. All right, I'm going to reread that sentence. The spirals of the pine cone are the material manifestation of the archetypal lines of dynamic energy. Where the lines cross, the bracts precipitate and become visible. Matter precipitates where positive and negative spiral rhythms synchronize. All conifers, spruce, fir, redwood, giant, sequoia, hemlock, and cypress, produce the modified flowers we call cones. The Swiss naturalist Charles Bonnet, known mainly for his studies of insect metamorphosis, collaborated in 1754 with the mathematician artist J.L. Calandrini for the first modern mathematical study of branch and leaf arrangements, beginning with the pine cone. They coined the word phyllotaxis, Greek for leaf arrangement, when they noticed the cone's definite structure of opposite spinning spirals of bracts. What they discovered was that counting the number of parallel spirals in each direction, not the number of bracts, will inevitably yield consecutive numbers along the Fibonacci series, often 5, 8, or 13. Their ratio of clockwise to counterclockwise spirals is an approximation of phi, the golden mean. This ratio tells us that the cone has an inherent balance and harmony. If the numbers are low in the sequence, the approximation to phi will be crude. Higher numbers produce a ratio closer to the mathematical ideal. Each plant manifests the approximation that best suits its needs. Countless examples exhibit this identical structure, although they display different numbers along the Fibonacci sequence. Quote, I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, and the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven. End quote. Walt Whitman. Modern botanical thought on this subject is that the cone simply accumulates bracts, mechanically emerging wherever they fit. But deeper insight will show that the bracts are precipitating upon the invisible lines of force where opposite spirals cross. We are seeing the manifestation. We are seeing the manifestation of the rhythm of an energy field. Just as the diminishing golden rectangle left a trail of whirling squares in its wake, the power of life leaves a trail of living matter in its wake as it whirls through the world. Plants are the visible clothing of the creating process. Consider these examples. Better yet, observe living vegetation. The garden, greenhouse, and grocery are libraries of the Fibonacci rhythms of nature's creating process. Verify that each seed, fruit, and leaf manifests itself where two opposite spinning lines of force cross. If you wish, count the numbers of parallel spirals in each direction and use a calculator to determine how close each is to representing the phi ideal. Pineapples, raspberries, and blackberries are really mini fertilized ovaries that have spirally accumulated to form one fruit. Huh. The strawberry is an inside-out fruit with its seeds spiraling around the outside. Corn, wheat, and many blossoms package their seed kernels in efficient whirlpools. Corn's kernels seem to form straight rows called orthostiches. But take a closer look. The kernels spiral around and around the cob. The thorns, spikes, barbs, and needles of cacti and other plants wind around in spirals. These were once central veins in leaves, which diminished to conserve water in harsh environments like pine needles. The thorns of the rose wrap around in opposite spirals, revealing the subtle energy pattern of the archetypes of the creating process. The architecture of upright plants shows that they put out leaves in spirals around the stem, like a spiral staircase winding in either direction, clockwise and counterclockwise at different slopes. The illustrations on pages 170 through 171 show the leaf arrangements of some familiar plants and trees, listing their leaves slash spirals ratio. Listing their leaves to spirals ratio and characteristic angle between consecutive leaves, moving both clockwise and counterclockwise. Within each plant's stem are veins, or leaf traces, nourishing the leaves. Each vein feeds a chain of leaves along a particular pattern, passing those not in its pattern. The numbers of leaves between upper and lower leaves fed by the same vein comprise one leaf cycle, reminding us of the wavelength between waves of the sea. As your eye walks up and around the spiral staircase of leaves, you will discover that the number of leaves in one life cycle, that is, to the next leaf fed by that vein, is a Fibonacci number. Also, the number of spirals you turn to get to the next leaf cycle will also be a Fibonacci number. Each of the world's 350,000 known plant species can be characterized by the ratio of leaves to spiral in one leaf cycle. Can be characterized by the ratio of leaves to spiral in one leaf cycle. The higher the numbers are on Fibonacci sequence, and the more precise the ratio is to phi, the more complex the plant. So for example, ferns 2-to-1 ratio is crude, but sunflowers 89 to 55 is finer. By multiplying the inverse of this ratio by 360 degrees to get a measurement of less than 360 degrees, you will discover the angle between measurement of consecutive leaves as they emerge from the stalk that is characteristic of the species. The ideal angle is approximately 137.5 degrees, measuring in the opposite direction. On a clock, the angle would be made by the hands at 3 minutes to 4 o'clock. The ideal angle between consecutive leaves of a plant seen from above, the sun's eye view, provides minimum overlap. As Leonardo da Vinci noticed, there are supreme advantages to this spiraling arrangement. The more precise the phi ratio is, the less overlap of leaves there is, so that each leaf gets the most sunlight and the least shade. Plants seem to configure with the approximation to the ideal that best provides their needs for light, atmosphere, and balance. Look at plants from above, from the sun's eye view, and notice that their spiral configuration allows you to see each leaf. Oh, to see each leaf design also produces efficiently structured water collectors, solar water heaters, and photovoltaic collectors, which are also roles of plants. The golden spiral's geometric characteristic of self-similarity of part and whole guarantees that while the plant grows in size and weight, it maintains the same balance, stability, and center of gravity. Build a plant replica. With some skill, it's possible to build models of the structural rhythms of many plants. You'll need stiff paper, scissors, a pencil, thumbtacks, and an upright rod mounted in a base. This could be a pencil in a ball of clay. First, create or transfer the following spiral pattern onto firm paper or cardboard. Points along it are ideal, 137.5-degree intervals from each other. Note how each consecutive 5 points compose a whirling pentagonal pattern. Cut out the spiral and lift the eye into 3 dimensions, tacking it atop the rod so that the strip spirals around it. Tape the bottom to the base. Cut out paper leaves and glue or tape their stems onto the rod behind each of the points. The number of leaves is a Fibonacci number, as is the number of spirals. Any plants in the previous illustration can be replicated in 3 dimensions by replacing the points on the paper spiral with those of the plant's characteristic angle, using a protractor measuring out from the spiral's eye. A needle and thread drawn through consecutive points along the spiral, when seen from the sun's eye view, will create a pentagram star, the flag of life and excellence, showing that the principles of the Pentad are at the heart of living structures. The calm eye of the storm. We've seen how the archetypal principles of number manifest themselves as forms around us: circles and spheres, triangles, squares, pentagons, spirals, and the 5 Platonic volumes represent principles that shape the world. When we see stars and spirals, we know that there is life and excellence, motion, balance, and transformation. But the universe is not like a room filled with geometric shapes. These forms are the shape of the universe, the shapes of space itself. What we see and touch are the visible expression of forces and principles we can train ourselves to understand. For the sake of solving our environmental and social problems, we can and must learn to see with new eyes. The lesson of the spiral is that everything is not a noun, but a process, a dynamic energy event. The world resembles a whirlpool of transformation with which we can cooperate for our benefit. We can also use our experience to learn to see ourselves differently. A glance at the human body shows that in structure and function we can carry the pentagonal flag of life and excellence. Like other living forms, our body's ideal proportions grow in accordance with the golden mean, the phi relationship weaving balance, harmony, and beauty among its parts. The same accumulation is found. Let's double check what this says. Okay. The same accumulation proportion is found in the physical structure of living sea, land, and sky creatures and in the paths of atoms and galactic clusters. It is stirring to realize that each of the physical structures of the universe is a repackaging of the others. We hold the proportions of the solar systems in our hands, face, and whole body. One can fold an outline of the human body differently and create the proportions of a starfish and seashell, a rose, and the Milky Way galaxy. Perhaps the entire universe is a great living, intelligent being we just don't recognize. In the same way that one cell in your body doesn't suspect the existence of the person reading this, or even have the ability to comprehend your possibility. Wow. By turning from the world outside ourselves to the subtle world within, we move from the symbolic to the sacred. In symbolic geometry, the essential principle of the pentad is life and regeneration, expressed by the property of self similarity. Inwardly, this characteristic indicates the possibility of spiritual regeneration. Re- Rebirth from the human to the divine is sought by every one of history's religions. Methods for attaining it differ, but curiously, they share the spiral as a universal symbol of spiritual transformation, just as spirals indicate the transformation of forces in nature. In the Bible, the deity speaks to prophets from the same whirlwinds on which Native American initiates, like those in many other cultures, were carried to heaven. The approach to heaven, not a location in the clouds, but a symbol of regeneration to conscious identity with the higher self within. As never depicted as a straight line, neither is the descent to hell, as Dante tells us from his downward spiral tour. Craftspeople from ancient Egypt, Babylon, China, Africa, Europe, India, and Polynesia, and great artists from Bruegel to Blake have symbolized the spiritual path as a spiral. All people seem to understand this intuitively. Even the makers of popular movies feel it. On her dream journey, Dorothy is transported first from Kansas to Munchkin Land on a spiraling cyclone and travels from there to Oz via the yellow brick road, which begins, you will notice, at the eye of a golden spiral expanding ever outward to the Emerald City. And that photo there is Jacob's Ladder, a watercolor by William Blake, as depicted in a transforming spiral stretching between earth and heaven. With its inherent harmony, the spiral is a metaphor for our inevitable transformation within. This inner spiral is not the physical spiral of our body, the embryo and ears, hair and heart, fists and fingerprints, but rather a psychic one, beckoning us as a symbol of consciousness and the way we live. Our own inner spiral process whirls us into the mystery of the infinite within us. The spiral shows us that we are comprised of a continuum, not fragments as we ordinarily appear to ourselves. A clue waits coiled in the spiral's principles of self replication, self accumulation, self recurrence, and self similarity. The recurring key word is self. The message of the spiral is growth and transformation of ourself. At the center of ourself, deep within our consciousness, is a calm eye. Like the calm eye within a storm, our center is untouched by psychological turbulence. Peaceful, it observes all from the vantage of wisdom. Placid, it is unmoved by the turbulent weather of the surrounding psyche. When you're feeling connected with your center, it seems very familiar.
It feels like the self you know best, like who and what you know yourself to be, calm and knowing without thinking. To be centered is not the same as being self centered or selfish. Instead, it is the identity with the deep divine power that motivates us. Consider a spiraling top spinning, centered on its calm eye. As soon as it tilts slightly, the top goes off center and its path widens, spiraling away from its center of stability, away from its center of gravity. The further from its center it moves, the more it wobbles. Leaving the center creates the trail of the spiral, an attempt to regain balance. The center within us is the truth of our higher self, the reality deepest within which each of us calls I. Wow. I and I. Each time we lose sight of the I, capital I, we spiral toward the periphery. We appear to leave the center because we feel a sense of separation somewhere in our lives. We lose our vantage point of the center when we artificially divide ourselves and try to look at it, think about it, want it, grasp at it. When we leave our center, we are simply identifying with other possibilities of ourself, distracted by the turbulent realm of the four elements. And when we do, we miss the peace of the calm I and yearn to return to it, to transform ourselves back to identity with it. Identity with our center is always possible, as a wobbling top can sometimes be helped to regain balance. The further we wander from our calm center, the calm, capital I, the greater our experience of psychological turbulence. The motion of stepping away creates resistance, like moving an oar in water, leaving in its wake vortex streets of thought and emotion, desire and urge. Drifting from our center takes us away from the calm by creating resistance, resulting in the sometimes stormy turbulence of our psyche. Like water and air around us, fluid emotions and airy intellect within us moves in spirals. Like the golden spiral of nature, we grow by experiencing resistance and overcoming obstacles, adjusting our path as we go. We know we are off center when we drift into identity with the clamor of sensations, the dramatic whirlpools of passion and fear and anger, dust devils of desire, swelling waves of emotion, and when we are kept awake at night by winds of thought. It's a natural part of our growth process periodically to leave our center and come back to it, just as we must expand and contract to breathe. The creative pulse of the dyad between center and turbulence is part of our growing process. The rhythmic interplay between the impulse to divide ourselves from our center and the yearning that is expressed in our longing to return is found in the experience of constantly searching for and finding meaning in our lives. The interplay between these two forces manifests itself in the world as a curve. That's why the transformative path is characterized by a spiral and not another shape. A spiral pulses always simultaneously and yet remains constant in its properties throughout change. By being aware of our inner emotions and learning to observe ourselves, we can find the calm I or calm capital I within the weather surrounding our center of awareness. When we grow, we arrive at the same place where we were before, but we arrive more experienced and higher on the spiral. There is nothing pleasurable except what is in harmony with the utmost depths of our divine nature. Henrik Suso, end quote, German mystic from 1300 to 1366. And chapter 5, Pentad. Thanks for listening, folks. I will be back very soon. We'll pick up with chapter 6, Hexed, structure, function, order, which is all about a hexagon. Until next time, take care.